All right, yeah! Thank God for fantasy football. I'm Buster Brown. The show, well, it's called Redemption Rehab. Today, we're talking about our weekly waiver wire report for fantasy football. If you've had a good start to your season, well, that's just great. But if you didn't have a great start, we are here to help. So buckle up, get out your popcorn, and let's head over to the chalkboard.
Check out the facts.
Okay, here we are, checking out the Week 9 Weekly Waiver Wire Report. On the screen behind me is RT Sports. It's a great website for fantasy football and all fantasy sports, so when you get a chance, check them out. Today, we're talking about who we should be picking up on the waiver wire, and we're going to start out with running backs, and we're going to take a look at the Miami Dolphins. Today, they made a trade. It's Tuesday. Last night, the Cleveland Browns beat the Cincinnati Bengals, to give you some reference where we are in the season, and they traded Chase Edmonds to Denver in a big deal, and they picked up Jeff Wilson from the 49ers. I'll tell you what, this kind of changes the landscape in several ways. One, Miami has got Jeff Wilson, meaning Raheem Mostert's no longer a sure thing because Jeff Wilson's a really good running back. So they'll go with whoever the hot hand is. And, Chase Edmonds ends up in Denver, and he's the pass-catching back out of the backfield because, they got a lot of injuries over there in Denver. They got a bunch of veterans over there, and things might not be working out. So they brought in this guy, and hopefully he can ignite some fire. So keep an eye on those guys. I do like Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson. Not so sure about Chase Edmonds. Probably wouldn't be picking him up until, Denver's on bye. We'll have to see how that pans out. Let's take a look at some other running backs. I just wanted to catch you up on that situation. And let's take a look at some running backs that we like this week. Okay, here's the depth chart for the Atlanta Falcons. This is a big deal because Cordell Patterson could come back any day now. They also have veteran Damian Williams on their IR. So these guys should be coming back in the next week or two. So keep an eye on that. Right now, the starting running back is Tyler Algier. He's having a great year. Let's take a look what he's done. As you can see here, Tyler Algier's had a pretty good couple weeks since Cordell Patterson has been off on IR. Last week, he had 14 carries for 39 yards, but here's where he makes the difference. He had 3 catches for 46, and he got himself a TD. Got 17 points. We like him against the Chargers, and we like him against Carolina. Question is, when's Cordell Patterson coming back? Who else do we like? This Carolina backfield right here has been like Deontay Foreman, 3 touchdowns last week. He's having a really good year. Since they traded Christian McCaffrey, Chuba Hubbard's been hurt. He's going to come back probably this week and start playing. I'd be keeping an eye out. I'm pretty sure Deontay Foreman is not in your waiver wire, but Chuba Hubbard might because, let's face it, he was hurt last week. He could be coming back. I'd be considering picking him up. Another running back I really like that might be on your waiver wire, as you can see here, he's only rostered in 62% of your leagues, is Nyheim Hines. Last week he had 12, almost 13 points, 5 carries for 20 yards and a touchdown with 2 receptions and 29 yards on 2 targets. Today he got traded to the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo Bills might be going to the Super Bowl, and this guy's going to compete for carries with Devin Singletary. And another running back I consider picking up, we've been telling you about Gus Edwards. I doubt he's on your waiver wire anymore. We've been telling you about him for weeks. Finally, he gets back. He gets hurt. He pulled a hamstring. Chance of him playing this week are 50-50. So I would check to see if Kenyon Drake's available. I think he's probably the next in line to get some carries. J.K. Dobbins is out. Mike Davis wouldn't be goofing around with him. But Kenyon Drake is someone I'd be looking at. Look, he got 16 points last week, and he didn't even play the whole game. He had 7 for 62 yards. Then he had 4 receptions for 5 yards and a touchdown. Look, I can tell you what, man, this kid gets the start. He's going to have a good game against New Orleans. New Orleans defense is pretty good. But, Kenyon Drake may have got cut because Gus Edwards is back. Although he might not be playing this week against New Orleans, and they got a bye coming up. So I'll bet you see Kenyon Drake get the start. Keep an eye on that situation. Okay, switching over to wide receivers. I'll tell you right now, we've been talking about Rondale Moore all year. We told you that when Marquise Brown got hurt, this guy was going to have to step up, and he did last week. 2 weeks ago, he only had one catch for 31 yards because they tried him out as a wide out, and they put him back in the slot last week, which is his normal position where he's comfortable, and he blew up. Let's take a look and see what he did this week. Okay, as you can see here, he scored 23 points out of the slot. He had 7 receptions for 92 yards, 1 touchdown on 8 targets, and he ran the ball twice for 12 yards. Look, like I said, when Marquise Brown comes back, I get it. He might not be someone you want to put in your lineup until Marquise Brown, who has a broken bone in his leg, and he's on IR. He's going to miss. He missed a couple games, definitely missing 2 more. But he could be out a whole nother month. You just don't know. So I'd be going out and getting me some Rondale Moore. Okay, here we are looking at the Los Angeles Chargers. And I'll tell you what, there's a guy on a lot of waiver wires out there because of the injury to Mike Williams right here. This is the depth chart for the Los Angeles Chargers. Keenan Allen's coming back from an injury. And it's this guy, Josh Palmer and DeAndre Carter. If you can go out and get one of these 2 guys and stick them in your lineup, I'll tell you right now, I think you're going to find they're going to do okay. As you can see here, Josh Palmer has done well. He's had some pretty good games. Got hurt here, didn't play, was on bye. He's coming back against Atlanta, then San Francisco, Kansas City, so he should be able to do some decent damage in those games without Mike Williams there. And another guy that may stick out, he hasn't done much all year, is DeAndre Carter. He didn't do much against Seattle, 3 catches for 37 yards, but he did have 7 targets. He is going to get in the game, and he's going to get a chance to play well against Atlanta without Mike Williams. And whether or not Keenan Allen comes back strong, we won't know until that game. Okay, for those of you who don't know, but I'm probably sure most people in fantasy football do, the Kansas City depth chart's right here. There's some good talent on this roster that might be on your waiver wire. Mecole Hardman's probably gone, but they went out and traded for this guy, Kadarius Toney. We suggest you go out, if you have room on your bench or your roster, to stick Kadarius Toney until he gets accustomed to the playbook. May take him 2-3 weeks, but I'll tell you what, I hear he's healthy, and he's going to play well with Patrick Mahomes. So go get him. Okay, here's the Baltimore Ravens depth chart. I'll tell you what, there's a couple wide receivers. I wouldn't be surprised if one of them had a big game. One of them is this guy right here, Devin Duvernay. A lot of people cut him because he was hurt and then he wasn't playing well. Let's check out and see what he did. As you can see here, last week against Tampa Bay, which is a good defense, over 16 points, 4 catches, 31 yards on 4 targets, and he rushed the ball twice for 33 yards and had 1 TD. Let's see who else I like on this team. Here's a blast from the past. Demarcus Robinson used to play for the Kansas City Chiefs, been in the league for 7 years. He comes in, hasn't done anything all year. With the fact that Rashad Bateman is hurt, this guy comes in and against Tampa Bay scores 12.5 points, 6 catches for 64 yards on 8 targets. There's some people on this depth chart that we like. I mean, Demarcus Robinson can have a big game. I would say he's not owned in any leagues right here. Devin Duvernay's owned in half the leagues, but he might be on your waiver wire. And we're going to talk about another great person, if Mark Andrews is hurt, is Isaiah Likely in tight ends. So there's some depth at this. They score a lot of points, and we're recommending you keep an eye on these guys. And if you need a wide receiver for a week, hey, maybe one of these guys available on your waiver wire, you should go out and pick them up and stick them in your lineup. Okay, we're looking at the Carolina Panthers depth chart. The guy you really want is DJ Moore, especially with P.J. Walker at quarterback. We're assuming P.J. Walker is going to be the quarterback for a while, and he's starting to open up the field. One of the guys he's targeting right here is Terrence Marshall Jr. As you can see right here, 12.7 points. He had 4 catches for 87 yards on 9 targets. The 9 targets tells me he's in the game plan. Therefore, he's starting to come on. He was a high draft choice. I think he was taken a couple of years ago in the 2nd round out of LSU. Kid can play, man. He played at LSU with some really great players like Justin Jefferson and Chase down there. Those are good players. So this kid's coming in, and he might start to play well. It's hard to say. You can see he's only rostered in 6% of the leagues. If you absolutely have to have a wide receiver, this is one of our sleepers. We're suggesting maybe you go out and pick him up. Another guy on this roster that might get some playing time, he's got it's been around for a while. Laviska Shenault. He used to play for the Jags, been in the league for 3 years, 6'1", 220 pounds. He had 5 catches for 26 yards on 6 targets. I wouldn't be surprised if they started getting him more involved in the game plan, because who else do they have to throw the ball to besides DJ Moore? And another guy we've been talking about all year, he was a deep sleeper earlier in the year. When week 3, we told you we liked him as our deep sleeper, comes out and gets you 30 points. Well, last couple of weeks, we haven't talked much about him because we thought he'd be playing behind other guys, Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, and Darren Waller. And against New Orleans, scores 13.5 points, 7 catches on 64 yards on 8 targets. So Mac Hollins is playing well. And I think you got to get him in your lineups. Hunter Renfrow's not playing well. And, they don't have their tight end. Maybe he's coming back. But, this guy's picking up the slack. And if the Raiders are having injury issues and they don't have their full complement of players this week when they travel to the East Coast, take on Jacksonville, I'll tell you what, man, I might have to put this guy in my lineup because he's having a pretty good year. But I would only do it if I was desperate and didn't have anybody else to put in there. I also wanted to show you the Chicago Bears depth chart. Darnell Mooney's their number 1 guy. We're going to talk about Justin Fields later in quarterback. He's playing really well. I mean, he scored 30 points against Dallas. He's got a decent schedule. He plays Detroit twice coming up here the rest of the year. The rest of the schedule is very difficult. But you can see here they traded for Chase Claypool, and he's going to easily come in here and be their number 2 wide receiver. I think that opens things up for the running backs, Montgomery and Herbert. I think it opens up the field for Justin Fields. If Chase Claypool can come in and play well, I think he's going to be there for a couple years. I think you're going to see Chicago start to win some games. They're going to have to play a lot, throw the ball more, because they basically given up some good defensive players. Roquan Smith got traded to Baltimore this week, and Quinn, a pass rusher who's one of their better players, got traded last week to Philadelphia. They did bring in some talent, so they do have Chase Claypool is some decent talent. He likes to run down the field, and I think they got a quarterback in Justin Fields that can hit him with the ball. Let's head over and take a look at some tight ends we like for week 9 of the weekly waiver wire report. Okay, we've been telling you for weeks about Greg Dulcich, rookie out of UCLA. We talked about him in our NFL draft preview show. We told you he was going to be a good player, and look, he went out to England against Jacksonville, had 12.7 points, 4 catches, 87 yards on 5 targets. So we think you should go out and get him. He's on bye this week. We also like this guy, Tyler Conklin. We told you in weeks 2 and 3 and 4, hey, go out and get this guy, because he's going to do well. And here they had a quarterback change. Didn't do anything against Miami. Didn't do anything against Green Bay. Started coming on against Denver with Zach Wilson until Zach Wilson lost his good running back, Breece Hall. Now they have to throw the ball. So he comes out and gets you almost 26 points, 6 receptions, 79 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 10 targets. Look, Zach Wilson found out what Joe Flacco already knew, is that you don't have the running game, so you're going to have to throw the ball to stay in some games. And this is one of the guys I'd go out and pick him up and get him in your lineup. They play Buffalo. Only way they're going to beat Buffalo is if they throw the ball, because they certainly aren't going to run the ball against Buffalo. So we'll see what happens, but I'd be going out and picking up Tyler Conklin and putting him in your lineup. Another guy we've talked about for weeks is this depth chart for Baltimore. Mark Andrews, man, he doesn't look like he's playing well. He hasn't done well in the last 2 weeks. 1 week he had no points. Last week he had a handful. He's playing hurt, man. I'll tell you what, I wouldn't be surprised if coming up here, they may have to set him down, get him some rest. And the guy I would suggest is the guy we've been talking about all year is Isaiah Likely. He's another rookie coming out of Coastal Carolina. We also focused on him in our NFL draft preview show as a rookie tight end, and let's see what he did. As you can see here, man, without Mark Andrews in the lineup, 19.7, had 6 catches for 77 yards and a touchdown on 7 targets. I like this kid. I think he's more of a wide receiver playing tight end. I think they're going to have to get him involved. I would go out and put him on my bench, and if for some reason Mark Andrews isn't playing, I'd put him in my lineup at tight end. And I'll tell you what, I think he's going to end up scoring some points against New Orleans, and there's a bye week coming up, so it wouldn't surprise me if they sat Mark Andrews down or maybe gave him some rest during this game. I wanted to also show you the Detroit Lions depth chart. Today, they traded T.J. Hawkinson to the Minnesota Vikings, so he's going to have a good couple years there. I'm pretty sure he's under contract this year. I'm not sure about next year. He might be a free agent, probably is. Why else trade him? So T.J. Hawkinson's going from Detroit to Minnesota. That leaves these two guys, Brock Wright and James Mitchell. I think if Brock Wright is healthy, I think you could see him catching 4 or 5 balls in a game for maybe 40, 50 yards if you're in desperate need of a tight end. But keep an eye on him. He's one of our deep sleepers. And because T.J. Hawkinson went to Minnesota, Irv Smith, the guy we liked all year, hasn't done anything. But he went on IR with a high ankle sprain. I'd go ahead and cut him. And I'll tell you what, we've talked about tight ends, we've talked about wide receivers, and we talked about running backs. Let's go talk about some quarterbacks because the playoffs are coming up, and you want to make sure you have quarterbacks that have easy schedules during your playoffs. Okay, here we are looking at the Denver Broncos schedule. If you want to get a good quarterback that might be on your waiver wire, it's probably going to be Russell Wilson. You can see right here in week 9, they're on bye. And he hasn't been playing well at all. But he's got a pretty good schedule coming up. So, Tennessee, at Tennessee secondary, I mean, they're giving up a ton of yardage on the passing. So are the Raiders. Carolina gets back their top 2 cornerbacks. They could be difficult, but they've been giving up a lot of yards. Baltimore, Kansas City, Arizona. I mean, that's a pretty good schedule coming up here for Russell Wilson. So if he's on your waiver wire and you need a quarterback, I'd pick him up. He might be on your waiver wire. He's been cut on a lot of leagues. So I'd be looking at him. And I got another quarterback that you might be a little bit leery on, but he's got an amazing, easy schedule too. And it's this guy. It's Trevor Lawrence. I know you're thinking, what are you thinking about? I mean, I had him in my lineup last week and he got me 9 points. Almost lost my game, but I didn't have a choice. My starting quarterback was Patrick Mahomes. He was on bye, so I put him in there and I almost lost my game. But he's got a pretty easy schedule coming up too. Look, the Raiders. He could make some hay there at home against the Raiders. He's got to play well against Kansas City, so they're going to be behind. So he's going to be throwing the ball. He's going to be running the ball just like he should. He's going to go on bye and comes back. And he's got easy schedule. The Ravens secondary is not very good. Neither is Detroit. Neither is Tennessee. Before it starts to get a little more difficult, but he's got an easy schedule. So if you need a backup quarterback and he's on your waiver wire, go get him. And if you have to stick him in there in games like that are coming up here, he's not a bad choice, even though he had a bad game against Denver in England. Okay, this quarterback's really risky. If he's on your waiver wire, probably not, is Justin Fields. I'll tell you right now, once they traded for Chase Claypool, you throw him in with Darnell Mooney, their running game, the offensive line's not too bad. Justin Fields is doing what, Trevor Lawrence won't do, which is run the ball. This kid can't, and his schedule's pretty good. Look at it here. Miami, that's going to be a tough game for Justin Fields. They've got a good secondary and a good defense. But then next week they play Detroit. It's going to be a very high-scoring game. I could see against Detroit Justin Fields putting up 28 to 30 points before he heads out and plays Atlanta and the New York Jets, before clearly his schedule gets tough. I mean, Green Bay's tough. The Eagles are tough. Buffalo's tough. Before in the playoffs, he hits Detroit again. But you can see that he's got a pretty decent schedule coming up before your playoffs in your league. Might be considering trying to pick up Justin Fields. And there's another quarterback we really like, and it's this guy. It's Jimmy Garoppolo for the 49ers. He's on bye this week, so he's going to be on a lot of waiver wires because teams have to cut him or maybe had to just to play somebody this week because of buys. And, you've got a good game against the Chargers coming up. The Arizona's going to be a high-scoring game. Saints have a good secondary. So does Miami and Tampa. But for the next 2 weeks here, Jimmy Garoppolo can help you a lot. And later on in the season, during the playoffs, Seattle, Washington, Las Vegas, that's not a terrible schedule. It's not great, but it's not too bad. So I'd be checking out Jimmy Garoppolo if you need of a quarterback to start for a couple weeks after their bye, or maybe you just need somebody to plug in as your backup the rest of the year. Let's take a look at some kickers and defenses that I like for week 9 of the NFL season. Okay, here we are looking at the schedule for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I like Kansas City for 2 reasons. One, they play the Tennessee Titans, as you can see right here, after their bye, which is this week. So that's 2 good reasons why Tennessee's struggling. Their quarterback's hurt. I don't expect the rookie Willis to be in there. I think they'll get their starting quarterback back. But I like Kansas City's defense. And I'll tell you what, because they were on bye, I had to cut Harrison Buckner in a league because I didn't have a choice. I didn't have anybody else to cut, and I had to pick up a kicker because in the leagues I play in, you have to have a starting player in your lineup. You can't have somebody on bye or inactive, which is a rule you guys should do in your leagues. Leaving a spot empty is not right, and it lets somebody else win. So that's not fair to the other people in your league. So I do like Kansas City. I do for a defense, and check to make sure Harrison Buckner is not on your waiver wire because he was on bye last week. Anyways, that's it for week 9 of the weekly waiver wire report. I'm Buster Brown. The show is called Redemption Rehab. Good luck.